Good evening, adventurers. Today we have another horror story. In this one, a group had to kick a real friend who'd invited themselves to a Dungeons & Dragons group completely out of the game. It's always sad when a friend's playstyle doesn't really fit with everything else that's going on, but in Dungeons & Dragons, the needs of the many do definitely outweigh the needs of the few. And in a situation like this where there are clashing playstyles and it's bringing down the game for everybody, it is best to part ways. That doesn't necessarily mean that if you find yourself in a game where your playstyle kind of clashes with the other people, that doesn't make you a bad player necessarily, and it just is a case of not having the right group. Let's get into it. Today's tale is titled, "Sometimes the only valid action is to kick an in-real-life friend from the gaming group." I have a long story to share. Unfortunately, it takes place across 3 years. I was close to Friend in high school, mainly because we took the same classes. After graduation, we lost contact. The rest of my high school friend group eventually got back together to play tabletop RPGs. The group was RP and story oriented. We did not exclude Friend on purpose, but Friend only liked writing stories and not really playing games, so we thought she wouldn't be interested. Yet when Friend heard we were playing, she wanted to join. What followed was Friend being incompatible with the rest of the table, and occasionally overstepped social boundaries. No one wanted to say anything about it. In the first half of the campaign, Friend wanted to play a cat person, a girl with cat ears, who acted like a cat. I'm sure that's fine on the right kind of table, but no one else on our table was into this. The DM was new and didn't want to say no. The DM offered for us to partake in world building. The Friend took the offer to create her character's home province, while disregarding the DM's setting. In short, we got Japan populated by cats in the middle of Europe. We also got a whopping 20 noble clans in one tiny village, in a tiny island where nobility was supposed to be overthrown. The DM is aware that this also was a mistake, but didn't know better back then. Friend's character was a generic Mary Sue, from a family of Mary Sues. In her long backstory, she had naturally slain a red dragon at level 1. The DM had her tone this down at least. Friend wrote erotic fiction about her character and sent it to the DM, but she had never once asked the DM's permission for this. Friend also had a kind of script for her character's story. Story goals are great, but she was upset when there were obstacles to overcome. She ignored plot hooks given for her if they contained hardships. More than that, she was upset when her actions had consequences. A big example was when our group needed to access a temple to a god of sacrifice. Only those who made a personal sacrifice could enter. Her character sacrificed all memories of her lover. Before she did this, it was made clear she could never get her memories back. Afterwards, she was upset because her character could no longer have a happy ending. In roleplay, she began asking extremely meta questions in hopes of them leading to her regaining her memories. She was also hostile towards me because my character was the only one in the group who didn't lose memories. My character gave up her dominant hand. We eventually had to convince the lover to give Friend's character, now a stranger, a second chance, because Friend was so set on them being together. Friend was extremely jealous to be a ranger in a group full of casters. She was offered class change, which she refused. Primarily, she was jealous about high damage spells I took for my sorcerer. She became convinced sorcerers were overpowered in 5th edition. She was also jealous about the stories unfolding for our characters. When I agreed to become champion to a forgotten deity, her character suddenly wanted to be a champion too. Previously, her character had been non-religious. Yet, while I worked to revive my deity's religion, she asked the DM for freebies, and on occasion berated her deity for not taking action. Friend was a murder hobo. In combat, she got angry when she didn't hit an enemy. She never cooperated with us in combat because she wanted to win alone. She also perceived our characters as ultimate good, and she wanted to shoot everyone who was not good. She was upset when I stopped her from shooting people, including a literal child. When we finished one story arc, the DM needed a break. We talked a lot about how everyone could improve. Friend said she wanted to learn to roleplay. She did change for the next arc, but it wasn't all for better. We lost one player because she couldn't commit for another year of Dungeons & Dragons. Friend suggested a replacement, someone only she knew. Newbie was a teen, while we were all young adults. DM wasn't sure if this was a good fit. I foolishly suggested that we give it a try. Yet Newbie never talked. She didn't answer when we engaged her. She didn't pay attention. On occasion, she did something random and funny. Newbie left the group peacefully after agreeing that D&D was not her thing. Friend said to us that she'd found Newbie's behaviour frustrating too. This bit is important because ultimately, Friend was kicked for the same behaviour. Fast forward, a big bad dragon from Friend's backstory returned. Friend wasn't even eager to confront it, but I suggested we should go. We were level 15 or so at this point, and I teleported us over as soon as possible. The province was on fire, but Friend shrugged. While we started saving citizens, Friend saw the dragon and was invigorated. She told no one, ditched her party, and ran to 1v1 the dragon. She met that previously betrayed lover on her way. They were both killed in 2 rounds of combat. Resurrection was extremely difficult. For heroes only, really. After a long talk, we resurrected Friend's character because she was living in a world of sunk cost fallacy. She literally said if I don't get my character back, I would have wasted 2 years for nothing. Our cleric, a god of death, refused to resurrect the lover. She said she had broken the rules enough already. For the rest of the campaign, Friend was obsessed with bringing the lover back. She would do anything, including evil acts. It was cool character development, except she got angry out of character every time we pointed out her character was becoming evil. Friend had some okay roleplay moments, but more often she liked to do things for shock value. Often she devalued others for this end, such as she went around telling people about my character's illegitimate child with a politician, because she found infidelity amusing. She once watched my character be paralysed magically and then coup de grace by a stranger. Moments later she walked away and left my character in a puddle of her own blood. She had many rounds to react, but this was one of the only times she chose not to metagame to help. Whenever I said my character no longer trusts her character, she took this as real hostility between us. I didn't know how difficult it was for her to differentiate between a character and a player until it was too late. Admittedly, I added to the negative mood at the table. Towards the end of the campaign, I wasn't looking forward to playing with Friend. I came to the table in a bad mood and got annoyed at small things. Through the campaign, several times, we as players discussed what was going wrong and what should be done. Every time it seemed things were alright, but they weren't. When we ended, Friend revealed the campaign had been so upsetting to her, she had cried for months after games. No one knew because she had lied about being alright. Now that we had the whole story, we talked, again. At this point we should have concluded that Friend was not fit to play with us, but we didn't. I took over as DM and invited everybody from the previous game. I don't even know why I was still so naive still. Friend was impossible to work with. She disregarded the lore I gave her. She tried to disregard my homebrew races and character creation after I explicitly explained she cannot take anything from the player's handbook. She refused to make a backstory, for which I only asked for 1 paragraph. She didn't want to be a cleric, but as the party had no healer, she offered to be one. She never enjoyed cleric and never healed anyone but herself. I asked her time and again if she was happy with her character, and if she wanted, she could swap to her original idea of a monk. She kept lying and saying that she always wanted to be a cleric, until I showed her screenshots of her original character plan. I also discovered that she cheated by not marking used spell slots and swapping prepared spells during in-game days. After about 10 sessions, she didn't participate in the story, and sometimes she didn't even pay attention. I started asking if Friend was okay. After a lot of back and forth, she admitted she was upset by something that had happened in the game. I tried asking how I can improve the game and what I should change. She never answered. After some more weeks, I had to ask if she even enjoyed playing at all. She said she doesn't care about Dungeons and Dragons. At this point, it became clear that she only came to the table to hang out while we were super story focused. She had most likely realised way back that Dungeons and Dragons wasn't for her, but she wanted to not be excluded by her friends. I was very tired. I had 2 options, either I cancel the game or she goes. I chose the latter. I told her the reasons, including that she was not participating and was disruptive at the table. Now she was very upset, and she was getting the boot for the same reasons that had previously been valid for booting someone else. She tried to argue that I was not a true friend because I kicked her. I told her that a true friend would not force herself to sit through a boring activity every week and drag down everyone else's experience. Friend did not talk to me for a couple of days, because she thought I was terminating our friendship. Then we sort of talked it out. We hung out doing other stuff for a while. Then, as one naturally would, we found a replacement player. The situation imploded again. Friend had been holding a grudge. Now she came back screaming how she was betrayed and replaced. We tried to explain to her that this was not true. She asked me to define our friendship. At this point I just said, I've not talked to you outside of Dungeons and Dragons after we graduated. We are acquaintances. She had, however, thought we were very close friends, somehow, and things just got worse from that. Our discussion ended up with her walking out for good. Ever since, I've honestly had fun playing Dungeons and Dragons. And there we have it. This one was certainly an emotional one, and things can get really, really difficult if you have two real life friends who try and come together to do something like this and there's just a massive clash. I think really the ideal situation is obviously that she realised she wasn't enjoying Dungeons & Dragons and she pulled herself out and there was no harm, no foul. Everything just kind of got too emotional here. People took things too personally, and it's never a good idea when playing Dungeons & Dragons, especially roleplay heavy Dungeons & Dragons, to try and equate your emotions with your characters too much. Empathy is a good thing, but tying yourself up to your character to the point that if they get hurt emotionally, you take that personally and take that with you outside of the game. That's just always going to be a bad time. Have any of you ever had a player that just clashed with everybody else's personalities and playstyles at the game? How did you deal with it? Was it a real life friend? Or have any of you had struggles with a real life friend in the game, or arguments that were caused with real life friends over Dungeons & Dragons? I look forward to hearing what you have to say. That's all for tonight. But remember, the tavern is always open. Good night.